Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and I'm joined by a man who hates who pudding. His name is Mike Roth.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
What's up with that?
And then they say, who hates that?
Who hates who pudding?
I don't even know what it's made out of.
Whose?
Yuck.
Come on.
Ick. Ick.
I'm just saying, you've seen the Who's. They look delicious.
Yeah, they look very kind of nasty.
In my world,
I don't think they bathe
in
much.
my world, the Grinch is like Gargamel, and he's always trying to eat those Who's. Yeah.
Nah.
I'm rewriting fan fiction. I'm writing right now.
Gargamel wanted to make them into gold. I
Really?
think Azrael wanted to eat them.
All right.
I don't know. We're going to have to go into depth on this. This is an important piece of
We better,
American history.
we better, for a throwback, look forward to the Smurf movies as a throwback. This week we have a couple of movies to discuss, and then we have a little discussion to have at the end. But first we are going to start off with what is on the marquee this week. And first up on the marquee, we've got a movie called Spotlight from director Tom McCarthy. Spotlight is a film with a star-studded cast of amazing actors, and it is all about the Boston Globe in 2001. There was a team, they were called Spotlight, working for the Boston Globe. They were like the best of the best, the heavy hitters that only worked. They were like an elite unit that investigated and broke big stories for the Globe. And in 2001, they started focusing on investigating the Boston diocese and some priests that may have had an inappropriate contact with some kids. And the cast is just incredible. You have Michael Keaton, who leads up this team. You have Mark Ruffalo, Rachel McAdams, and Brian Darcy James, who are his other three people on the team. It's a four-man team of reporters. You have Liv Schreiber, who comes in as the new editor of the Boston Globe at this time, and he's kind of pushing this story. Let's break this. You've got Stanley Tucci as a lawyer who is representing the victims in this case. And you have John Slattery, who is kind of the middleman between Liv Schreiber and the Spotlight unit. And it's basically watching them as they are piecing together this investigation into this. And they start facing roadblocks everywhere because in Boston and within the Catholic Church, they don't want this to be found out. And the investigation goes from the abuse to the cover-up. And the cover-up within the church, the cover-up within the community, because the church is such a strong part of the community, especially in Boston, but for a lot of people. And the focus starts to kind of shift, and the team is trying to get through these hurdles that are placed in front of them, but they're doing God's work. They've got the righteousness of the victims behind them, and they're trying to get the truth, right? I mean, they've got the truth on their side, and they're fighting through. And it's really just the story was put on these actors' backs. Mark Ruffalo was incredible in this movie. Mark Ruffalo brought this weird kind of physicality to his role. He had this kind of affected stance and delivery, trying to mimic, because this is based on actual events. This is a true story.
Yeah.
So he's trying to mimic the guy who he's playing. He did a really good job. And he also plays this guy who's just ultra passionate about what he's doing. He wants to break this story. He's excited to break a story. He'll go to no ends. Michael Keaton is phenomenal. It's just great watching Michael Keaton out there and his interactions with John Slattery. Stanley Tucci is incredible. I mean, really, these are great actors, you know, and it's just a great time. I like that there's no heavy, put in quotes, Boston accents.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I was kind of dreading that, and then I started realizing nobody's going for it. Nobody's going for the Harvard Yard accents. They're just going to put it out there and like, look, let's just all understand we're not going to go with that. That was okay. I didn't want to hear Liv Schreiber try and attempt a Boston accent, you know?
Yeah.
There was a couple of things that kind of drove me nuts. There was some odd camera work in the beginning. They obviously had a guy with the camera on his shoulder following them around. And it was some long extended cuts. But the camera was really kind of waving around, even during set shots where they're just focusing on the team. And you'd see the camera just kind of bouncing with like your natural heartbeat and rhythm. Like, we couldn't use a tripod here? We couldn't use a steady? That was kind of bothering me at points. There was some, maybe it was just the cut that I saw, but where the tops of heads were cut off in certain parts. And I thought, well, that's really odd.
Could that have been a problem with the camera?
I don't know if it was the aspect ratio that we had in the theater. I mean, the rest of it looked good, and for the majority of it, it was framed beautifully. There was a couple of scenes, though, where tops of heads were cut off, which made me think the rest of the film was framed right. Did they? I don't know.
That actually could have been a problem with the theater. I've had
That's
that
what I'm
happen
saying.
with a couple of my movies where I went in and I was like, whoa, this is really dark,
Yeah.
and then I found out
It was weird.
it was a
But the
light
camera
bulb
work
on
itself, the bounce within the scenes, that was an obvious part of the print. And there were just some gut-wrenching parts of this movie. The thing that I really appreciated coming out of this was, as difficult a subject as it is, and to go through and watch, it's not. I never realized that with something like this, it's not just the physical abuse; it's the spiritual abuse of people who, someone trusted like a priest does this. Who do you turn to? You would normally go to your priest.
Yeah.
For when you have an issue, and now it's like you've made me lose my belief in what I believed was good, and it's really, really mind-boggling and really well done. Like I say, this entire cast was incredible. Dealing with everything around it.
I've been hearing a lot of buzz. I have not seen this movie, but I've been hearing a lot of buzz about this, that this is going to be one of those small release movies that might end up getting an award.
I would be really surprised if Mark Ruffalo doesn't get nominated.
Okay.
I could see Michael Keaton also getting nominated. I don't know which one would be a lead and which one would be a supporting, because it's an ensemble.
Yeah.
I would guess they would choose Michael Keaton as the lead, just because he's Michael Keaton and he's the boss in this movie. And they all had equal screen time, but I would be surprised if both of them, or at least one of them, didn't get nominated. But ultimately, I highly recommend checking out Spotlight. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really, really loved it. So if you have it, if you can find it, check it out. I recommend.
If it gets a nomination, I'll see it in the
There you go.
mainstream in January.
What do you have for us today, sir?
I have the only major release movie that came out last week. It's a nice, sweet Christmas story. If you've ever heard of the Christmas demon Krampus, well, this is a movie about what happens when little kid turns his heart against Christmas. All this boy wanted was to have his family get together and just be like old times. Mom and dad loving each other, everybody accepting who they are, him and his sister palling around just like old times. All the love and joy and harmony that comes to Christmas that a lot of movies say really does not happen that much. And the kid, he sees this. He's like, oh, this is how Christmas is. Christmas Day is hard work. I don't want this anymore. And he rips up his Santa Claus letter.
Right.
Throws it out the window.
Oh, my goodness.
Which does not...
What could happen?
Well, what could happen is Santa Claus does not believe in you anymore. Krampus does.
Uh-oh.
He comes in to grant the boy's wish.
You've got a new friend.
He closes down the entire neighborhood, and this family is trapped in the house. And one by one, Krampus playfully, like the Christmas elf he is, plucks off each family member. Yeah. It is a horror movie. It is Christmas movie.
Man, we just can't get a sweet Christmas movie to save our lives, can we?
No, but this is the kind that a lot of horror fans don't get very often. I had a couple of problems. I'm just going to shoot these out right now. It is slow. It's slow moving. You have some great comedic actors. Michael Dougherty, he's the guy who written and directed this movie. He also did a little movie called Trick or Treat. If you're a horror fan, this is like one of your top Halloween movies. It's a great movie. He doesn't bring on the humor like he did with...
You've got David Koechner and Adam Scott. These guys are comedic actors.
They're powerhouses in the comedic acting, and even though they were funny, they weren't utilized how they should have been, which made the beginning of the movie pretty slow. And then at the end of the movie, this is not spoiler alerts, this is just how they decided to set it up. There was a lot of unnecessary flashing strobe lights. If you are prone to seizures, do not
be careful.
Be careful. Take some medication, bring a spoon, whatever. Because I'm not epileptic, but I was getting a little sick of trying to refocus my eyes every time there's a flash, and I don't know why they did this, to give it a creepy effect or whatever. I don't know, but it brought down the movie a little bit for me. But overall, I still thought this was a fun movie. It really was.
Yeah, Krampus was... I agree with your problem with it. It was a slow burn, and it was a slow burn that didn't go anywhere. Like, I'm fine if it's slow and there's a reason for it to be slow, but it felt like they were just wasting time for a big chunk of the movie, and I was having a hard time staying interested in it. And ultimately, I loved the final act. I thought it was a lot of fun. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Gremlins.
Yep.
It reminded me. It was the final act was great. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I mean, it kind of came on. I'm like, finally, we're doing something here.
Mm-hmm. The artwork for all the creepy creatures that Krampus brings along,
His elves,
his little elves of fun
Yeah.
and his presence and stuff, those were all real cool.
Yeah,
I really
had
liked
no
that.
idea what to expect out of them. Right, I had very little because we didn't see a lot of this in the trailers.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how serious they were going to take it,
Mm-hmm.
which direction they were going to go, how dark it was going to get,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved the decision they made on the design of the characters.
Mhm.
I thought it was a blast, and I
Yeah.
could this would be one of those movies like Gremlins or somebody's like, oh, that's classic, but I don't want to have to sit through that.
But and I was also really pleased with the end. I mean, they could have.
It was really great.
I can't say
No, no,
anything,
no.
but I was happy. I left smiling. I really did.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it felt like there was a large chunk of time that just kind of went
Yeah.
nowhere.
A lot of the snow scenes where it just felt like the director
the same
saw
again.
something that I think a lot of his audience didn't see.
Yeah.
You saw this winter landscape. You saw the coldness. You saw the loneliness. You saw only as far as you could, so you had this kind of claustrophobic feel even when you're out in the open.
Yeah.
Kind of like maybe like Jaws, you know,
Or like
where,
The Shining.
or The Shining, exactly. But it didn't come across as exciting at
Right.
all. It just felt really kind of slow.
Yeah.
But it's still fun, though.
It is fun. I ultimately gave Krampus 3 stars.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I gave it too. So you are correct.
Oh, good. Finally, I got one right. You know what? Would I watch it again? Probably.
Yeah.
Because I liked the end.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun. I might have a fast forward button going on in the beginning, but you know.
At the end of the movie, I wanted to get a Krampus shirt, and I wanted to get a little Krampus ornament and stuff like that.
You're saying they needed a merch stand out in the lobby,
They needed a merch stand.
I get it.
Krampus blankets would have been nice. Those theaters get a little cold. You
A
know
little
that?
chilly.
A little
I hear
chilly. You could have made a mint off of me with Krampus merchandise. You really could.
Beautiful. All right, that is our review of Krampus. Next up, we have a little discussion.
Yeah.
Before we talk about what is coming out, let's talk about there's a big movie that's coming out soon, right?
If you haven't heard,
Yeah.
this is a huge movie.
If you didn't know, now you know. There's a new Star Wars movie, of course. The Force Awakens is opening up soon, December 18th. And we figured, you know what? We're both a couple of big fanboys for Star Wars, and we're very excited about it. And with only 2 movies on the marquee this week, let's talk about some Star Wars. We're excited. We can barely contain ourselves. This is what we talk about off air. And so
it's kind of occupies my thoughts.
Yes.
When I'm not talking to people, when I'm bored and I'm just I like
I
to think of
rewatch
Star Wars.
I rewatch
Yep.
Empire in my head
Yes,
when
I do.
nothing's going on.
Which one of my favorite of the 6 that are already out.
Empire, my number 1 movie of all time.
Really?
My number 1 favorite movie ever made. The greatest. Now, without beating a dead horse on this,
Yes.
one of the biggest issues for fanboys in Star Wars is George Lucas.
Yeah.
As we go into this, George Lucas no longer has rights to it.
Mm-hmm.
Lucasfilm and everything involved with it was sold off to Disney a few years ago for
Yep.
$4 billion.
That's including LucasArts. That's including Electric Light and Magic.
Industrial Light and
And,
Magic, yep. And so now he has no control over this. Kathleen Kennedy runs Lucasfilm.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucas, obviously this is his vision, that he created this universe. Borrowed some things heavily, right?
Yes. If you've seen a movie called Hidden Fortress,
Right, the Kurosawa movie.
it's a great movie.
Yes.
And people who have seen the Hidden Fortress and see Star Wars, there's a lot of things that you can be like, wow, George Lucas was heavily inspired.
One came out 30-some years before the other.
True. You have some similarities of the movie is kind of narrated by the lowly characters. And George Lucas admits this. He's like, you know what? I wanted the movie to kind of start off with C-3PO and R2.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of start off the story, but he never really gives as much credit to the original, his source material, which would be Hidden Fortress, where, again, you have a really tall guy and a really short guy walking the desert. Bickering until they get split up, and then they're caught. And that's how they get back together.
They were part of a war.
This is the first
and
20
a
minutes of
rebellion.
Star Wars. And then you have, which is it's kind of similar again.
Uh-huh.
They come across old retired war general, much like Obi-Wan.
Uh-huh.
I'm not talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about Hidden Fortress.
Yeah.
And the only way this princess can be saved, which a princess needs to be saved,
Help me. You're my only hope.
is this general and to comedic, short and tall partners.
Right.
And they have to get the princess through enemy lines, along with the one thing that will help the rebellion gain strength again.
Will it be plans?
It's not plans.
Oh, okay.
It's
well,
gold.
It sounds nothing like Star Wars to me.
And that's the heavy influence.
Right.
They are completely separate movies. If you watch Hidden Fortress, you're not going to say, wow, this guy stole everything from Star Wars.
No, but I recommend watching The Hidden Fortress because it's one of Kurosawa's great movies.
It is a great movie. It gets a little corny, I think, at the end, but still. Some of the shots.
Great samurai movie.
It is great samurai. Even ends, both movies end this kind of same.
Yeah.
Where in the end of Star Wars, everybody's dressed nice and like.
Whoa, spoiler alert, Mike.
If you haven't
I still haven't seen these.
You haven't seen Star Wars?
I'm
1977?
waiting.
Tell you what,
I haven't
Black
heard if it's
Hole
good
is a
yet.
great
Oh,
substitute.
Gosh.
And that's another thing.
Let's not do Black Hole
It's
review.
finally Disney's time in the sun.
Yeah.
When Star Wars came out, Disney was like, wow, we got to get on this bandwagon.
Yeah.
Let's make something better than Star Wars.
Why not?
And everybody knows Black Hole. How many times have you seen this movie?
Just the once.
Is it on Blu-ray?
I have the trading card still from when I was a kid.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I know.
I can't even tell you what the plot is.
But so, I mean, getting back to Star Wars, I mean, so George Lucas, obviously, Star Wars is the massive success.
Yes.
And it is the one thing that I think is incredible to me, even being the Star Wars mega nerd that I am, is the lasting power that it has, generation to generation. Even when you go 15, 16 years without a movie, and even when those movies are questionable in how they came out, it stands strong. I can't think of another franchise, maybe the Bond franchise, but they continue to put movies out every 3-4 years, that has stood the test of time of 40 years.
Well, it's Star Wars, in my eyes, was an accidental masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
George Lucas had no idea what he had. There was enough ambiguity in the movie where fans could make up what's happening. You never, like the Han shot first controversy that Star Wars nerds argued about for a couple of decades. And George Lucas decided he was going to vandalize his own movie and fix that argument for us.
It's that pomposity, though, that pompousness that drives me nuts. When you have visual evidence. I have the VHS tape of the originals.
Yeah.
And he says, it never happened.
I've read the comic books, and Han shot first. But, and to me, that made Star Wars even greater, because all the characters pretty much are stagnant. Luke is the same guy in the beginning. Leia's the same guy in the beginning. The droids, they don't ever change. They're droids. But Han was a scoundrel.
Yeah.
He was a bad guy. And for some reason, whether it was, and it was left up to the fans, whether it was love for the princess or just, I like being a good guy for once, Han is a character that changes. And
he's got a great past that's hinted to, but you have no idea what's going on.
And then back in 2000, George Lucas decided to, just say, hey, you know what was great about this character? That never happened.
Yeah.
We're going to make him like this. He was always a good guy. Han never changes, just like all my other characters.
And so one of the big issues is, I mean, as we get excited for The Force Awakens, is for me at least, as excited as I am, as the countdown has been going, I can't even describe how excited I am for this. I have to temper that expectation because the previous 3 movies burned. There's parts of the prequels that I love. There are amazing parts, and if you put on the John Williams score to any of these movies, I'm instantly transported back. But there are some really, really terrible parts of these movies that are just...
But that's the beauty of this next movie. The terrible parts isn't because Star Wars is flawed. Star Wars is a beautiful, fantastic universe that has been done even better by people who aren't George Lucas.
Right.
We have Empire Strikes Back, which is my favorite of all 6 movies. It's one of my top 10 movies of all time. It is a great movie.
It's a perfect movie.
George Lucas's least favorite movie. He did not write the screenplay. He is credited for the story, but we have a different director, which he just thought was a good director. Irving Kershner. And that's another thing. He downplayed this director who made the best of your Star Wars movies. And then they got progressively worse as George Lucas started to get into the fold. You had some great books of Knights of the Old Republic. You have some great comics of the movies. You have a television series, which the first couple of years were bad, but as George Lucas released his grips on those, they got better. We have J.J. Abrams, who has been known to bring back Star Trek.
Right, resuscitates dormant franchises.
And not just a little bit. They're huge successes. They're done, I think, perfect.
Yeah.
And now he gets a hold of Star Wars. I'm hoping if any director can bring life to this, plus a movie that's pretty much all about daddy issues, which is J.J. Abrams' big thing.
My biggest concern, though, is I trust J.J.
Yeah.
Problem is he's only doing episode 7, and then he's hands off, and it's into the hands of other directors. You have Ryan Johnson, who has made one of my 10 favorite movies ever with Brick, but has also made some really bad movies, and he is taking over episode 8. You have Josh Trank, who made Fantastic Four, who is vetted to do the Han Solo movie, has since lost that, but JJ's done after this one, and that kind of worries me. The other thing that kind of worries me looking ahead is that they're going to be churning out basically 2 movies a year once they get rolling.
Yeah.
And as much as I love Star Wars, I'm so concerned with it just getting oversaturated, as if Star Wars isn't oversaturated already in the marketplace of everything. But it just feels, I'm a little concerned about that. As much as I want more Star Wars all the time, sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for.
The way I'm looking at it is the Marvel Universe. The Marvel Universe, all the Marvel movies are a little bit different, and I think that's what keeps it alive. That's what keeps it fresh. We get 3 or 4 Marvel movies now a year, but they're separated.
2 a year.
Well, what do we have? We had
Ant-Man.
We had
That's it, right?
No, Avengers.
That was last year.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, last year we had Avengers. We had Ant-Man. We had
Ant-Man was this year. It's okay. It's all right. We didn't get 3 or 4, but
Oh,
that's
man.
not the point. That's not the point. I found it interesting, though, that I read an interview with Kathleen Kennedy, who's in charge of Lucasfilm right now. Interview that came out today, talking about the future of Star Wars.
Yeah.
One of the things that I loved about Star Wars, and you kind of hinted on it earlier, was the extended universe.
Yeah.
Splinter of the Mind's Eye. That series is one of my favorite series of books ever
Yeah.
about Star Wars. And Lucas was hands off with the extended universe. If you want to write a story, do it.
Yeah.
And so
You have to
it
follow
became,
certain things,
but it
that was
became part of the fans. Make fan fiction, make short movies. He didn't care. He let it go. And now Disney and Lucasfilm is in control of that. They erased the extended universe. They're in control of it. And she said the plan for all of these things is for the legacy movies, the saga movies, episode 7, episode 8, episode 9, those are all going to be about the Skywalker family story, right?
Yeah.
Then you have the offshoots, the side stories that are coming out. And those are going to be genre stories. So we have Rogue One coming out next year.
Yeah.
That's a heist film. You're going to have other films that'll be more like a noir film. And none of them are going to be tied together. She's not planning on sequels. There's a couple of things. Lucas had written, he had this grand vision for years about this live-action Star Wars series on TV, right? Talked about forever, and never happened. His plan was 400 episodes. Apparently, he wrote 100 episodes already. Wrote 100 episodes, could never get it going. And so
There could be a reason.
it was titled Star Wars Underworld, and it was supposed to take place between Jedi and Episode 1, and dealing with the underworld of Coruscant. And it's all supposed to be like film noir style of that. Kathleen Kennedy says, we're still planning on that. That's the thing. We have those scripts for 100 episodes. We also have a contract with Netflix to create a Star Wars series.
Nice.
She says that's not off the books yet. Also, the video games. They erased all plans for all video games when they bought Lucasfilm. They canceled all the video games. We just got Battlefront out.
Yeah.
But
That
there
was
were
just
many
what-
that were in the works that were supposed to come out when right after the deal was done. They canceled it all. There was one huge one called 1313. Yeah, Star Wars 1313. It was all about a young Boba Fett, learning about him. She says that's not off the books either. We want to control where we're going with everything.
I'm sure they're trying to do what the Marvel Universe did. It has
But
huge
they're not.
success.
Her plan is not to tie anything together, though.
Well,
She made it very obvious. We're not doing what Marvel does as far as one story. This side movie ties to the main movie. These characters tie to these characters. Everything's separate.
They might not tie together, but they're still part of the universe. So
Right.
if someone wants to use something from, let's say, the young Boba Fett, they can do it. Unlike DC, where you can't use anything from Gotham to explain Batman because that's a different universe
okay with
altogether.
But that's a side note. Real quickly before we move on, though, I mean, what is your anticipation level
My
going
anticipation
in.
is dangerously high.
Yeah.
I'm losing sleep over it at nights. I hate to be that kind of guy, but it just hit me last Wednesday.
Okay.
And
We're
that
getting close.
was when my eyes were open, when I should have had them closed, and I'm like, this movie's too far away.
Less than 1 week from the moment we're sitting here, I'll be sitting in theater watching Star Wars.
Yeah.
That excites me.
I-
Excites me.
I-
But you know what? I also remember thinking this exact same thing in 2001, and that scares me.
Yeah, I got in a little known fact. I got in a traffic accident getting my tickets. I was head in the cloud thinking of Star Wars, and I made a legal turn,
Oh, Mike.
and
What did you do?
I lost a car.
You know, it's funny because we could have this discussion, and I've had this, you and I separately and together have had this discussion spanning hours and spanning years, and it's something we could talk about Star Wars all day.
We
all
really
night.
could.
I mean, this is to jam. What are your thoughts about Star Wars into 15 minutes is unfair.
Yeah, and we could really go on for a couple of hours and critique every movie, and I could bash George Lucas probably for an hour.
It's
but
easy.
we can't. We
There's
have a half
so
hour
many
show
ways.
for you guys.
There's a great documentary called "The People versus George Lucas" that I
Uh-huh.
recommend if you just hate George Lucas. It's just a hate-filled
I
documentary.
don't hate him. I think he.
There's so
I
many
just
people with,
don't
oh,
like
he
him.
stole my childhood. That's not true.
No.
He has not made me hate Empire or anything like that.
No.
I just don't appreciate what he did with what he did.
Yeah.
But having said all that, I'm still excited. Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm
I can't
excited.
wait to review it.
I'm actually going to wait until people get out of the theater a little bit so I could get that center spot and just not be irritated by coughing children
Here's
or
my
anything like
concern.
that. I
So-
love children. I just don't want them talking during Star Wars.
So episode 1, go and see it.
Yeah.
Opening, first show,
Yeah.
stand in line, blah, blah, blah. Walk out. And I spent the better part of 3-4 days convincing myself that I loved it. I went and saw it like 4 times, 4 days in a row, convincing myself I love it. I love it. And it was about a week afterwards, I started replaying it a little more, like, oh, there's this, and then there's this. And
Same thing.
I'm worried.
I walked out kind of feeling hollow and excited at the same time. There's a lot of things I liked about it. I think
It's hard
we
to
have-
admit something I love
Yeah.
maybe isn't as great as I want it to be.
Yeah.
It's hard to admit.
I am doing the machete version right
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm totally avoiding that first one. I'm actually going to feel like I'm powering through
Just
2 and
hammer
3,
through.
but it's all going to be worth it, so I could see Ewoks battle off. Actually, either way, only
Yeah.
problem I had with Return, but we can't talk about it anymore because
No,
we
are
got
running low
mention
on
other
time.
things.
Having said all that, let's take a look ahead at what is coming soon, the week of December 18th. We have the biggest movie of that weekend, of course, is Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Trip, the 4th movie
Did
in
I say I was losing sleep over Star Wars?
the 4th movie in. I cannot believe that there are 4 of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the 4th movie in the franchise. They're trying to surpass Star Wars.
They're looking for a tax write-off.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that is the only reason why you open anything against Star Wars, unless it's Sisters.
Unreal. Yes, the next movie we have is Sisters, starring Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Looks like a lot of fun. Those two are great when they get together. And of course, last but not least, the movie we've just spent the last 15 minutes talking about, Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Go see it at Marcus Theaters. Go to the Palace here in
There's no
Sun
reason
Prairie.
why you shouldn't know that.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
so
we've been
many
telling you.
products out there. There's makeup. There's mac
They're not
and
trying to
cheese.
hide it. They're not
No,
trying to hide the movie.
It is coming out.
Yeah. So, of course, going into that, we have to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters. We highly recommend you go to the Palace here in beautiful Sun Prairie. Go sit in a Dream Lounger, watch The Force Awakens over and over again. Because, you know what? Disney needs your money, and so does Lucasfilm. They need your money.
And that's the reason why they are totally shilling out to anybody right now.
They paid $4 billion for this. They need to make some money back. If you want to find more from us, you can always find us on Facebook. Search Real Reviews TV. Find us on Twitter at Real Reviews TV. You can find past episodes from us if you go to ksun.tv. Look for Real Reviews. You've got 86 episodes of us or something like that on there. Go check them out.
Days of
Days
stuff.
of entertainment.
No
I
commercials.
promise you. But until next week, when we'll be talking about In the Heart of the Sea, my name is Jamison.
I'm Mike Roth.
Thanks for watching.